few more seconds.
With the emergence of NFTs and the metaverse, tech enthusiasts are now gearing up for what could be the next phase of the internet.
Bitcoin, it's ingenious, and blockchain is important, but Bitcoin has no unique value at all. It doesn't produce anything.
Good morning, afternoon, and evening to our viewers across the globe. From WHU Inside Business, I'm your host, Nicholas Peterson, and I would like to welcome you to our virtual studio here at WHU Inside Business, where we are gathered for the third live episode of our program that we call Perspectives. Since 2018, we've been producing insightful one-on-one interviews with many of the business leaders connected to our WHU network. But last year, when Corona hit, we decided to change it up and bring you an entire panel for a fair and live discussion about cryptocurrency, NFTs, and the future of web3. For 1 hour, this was last year, Professor Rudolph and I discussed these topics with distinguished guests, and we invited audience participation using live comments to gain insights from the different perspectives of our guests. Today, we want to continue this conversation about the monumental shifts in the global economic machine and ask ourselves, should we be investing in Web3? Web3 imagines the hardware and software of the internet migrating from corporate campuses of tech companies to the distributed networks of computers that no single entity owns or controls. Andreessen Horowitz describes Web3 as the internet owned by the builders and users, orchestrated with tokens. The term Web3 is often traced back to Gavin Wood, the co-founder of Ethereum blockchain, who in 2014 wrote that the web should move toward a zero-trust interaction system, where all interactions will be carried out pseudonymously, securely, and for many services, trustlessly. Ultimately, he imagined Web3 as the secure social operating system. However, others have argued that what is manifesting is not a world where the middlemen are cut out of action due to clever privacy protection protocols, but rather a new online world in which seemingly anything can be financialized. Such a setup, which places speculation at the core of digital life, has fostered an environment in which scammers are luring people into bogus investment opportunities in record numbers, as the Federal Trade Commission warned in 2021. Further criticisms from tech experts Dan Olson and Moxie Marlinspike argue that this utopian vision of Web3 is wrought with other problems, such as energy requirements, privacy, discrimination, and the permanent nature of the blockchain, leading to various exploits. Between Olson's essay and Moxie's recent critical explorations of the space, it is clear that there are serious issues that need to be addressed. Thus, we at WHU Inside Business decided to assemble a panel of experts to discuss these issues and help demystify the future of Web3. Now, before I introduce our guest speakers, I would like to quickly go over how the live stream will work. My team will be sifting through live comments from you guys on all platforms for our guest speakers to answer on air. If you have a question for a particular guest, please preface your comment as such. I will take some comments during the discussion if they are relevant to what we are discussing, and then we will have also time for Q&A at the end. And without further ado, I'm honored to present our panel for this evening. First, we have Teddy Bajowski, is a code artist and self-taught software engineer turned entrepreneur. He is the CEO and founder of Enzyme.so, an AI that turns words into websites and DApps, decentralized apps. At the intersection of AI, no-code, and web3, he is exploring how these technologies can impact and improve the future of work and creation. He is one of the creators of pizzaonchain.com, and he is also a partner at GSIX, an award-winning software consulting firm turned venture studio. Welcome, Teddy. Next, we have Justin Padinsk. He is an early-stage investor and startup scout for Alchemist X, the government and corporate services division of the Alchemist Accelerator, a seed-stage accelerator for enterprise startups. In 2016, he started tinkering with Ethereum and was hooked on the potential of decentralized ledgers and wallets. He was an early investor in several Layer 1 blockchains, including Ethereum, Polkadot, Binance Smart Chain, Terra, and Solana, and is also an active participant in several on-chain governance systems. He also advises the Web3 strategy at ArtXV, an art collective for neurodivergent artists with autism, ADHD, etc. And Justin and I also had the pleasure of working together at Alchemist Accelerator for a certain amount of time. Welcome, Justin.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Third, we have Sam Sobuti. He is the founder of his own digital consulting services, Sobuti Consulting, in which he works with a large team of freelancers to develop new sales strategies and and scale revenues. In 2021, he joined WHU Otto Beisheim School of Management to complete a master's in management. During his studies, he founded BillionaireBabies.io, the first German NFT project that provides crypto signals and investment opportunities with the goal of helping people lay the foundation for financial freedom in the future landscape of Web3. And last but not least, our very own official moderator for the evening, Professor Dr. Marcus Rudolph. Well, guys, thank you for joining us tonight. I know we're going to have a very interesting discussion. This is a hot topic, and there's lots to be discussed, and I'm excited to see what you guys have to say, what our audience has to say. And yeah, before we hit it off, I just want to go down a few facts about blockchain and Web3. So, first of all, in 2021, investors shoveled $30 billion into startups premised on Web3. More than 40 cryptocurrency companies created in 2021 already have achieved the unicorn status. And to top it all off, NFT sales hit $17.7 billion last year. It's way more by now. It's a 200x increase from 2020. So I would love to start with, first of all, since Web3 is somewhat of an ambiguous term, everyone has their own definition for what it will become. What do you think, other than cryptocurrency, really, because focusing on the other applications of Block3, what are the most groundbreaking and interesting applications of blockchain that you see in the future of Web3? And I'll start with you, Sam.
Perfect. I hope you can hear me good, and I hope my internet is working. So first of all, thank you for having me. Nicholas and I had a very long private discussion about the future of Web3. So I think you know my opinion, but I'm happy to share it now. I think we are very, very early stage on Web3. And I see so many options how to work with Web3 and develop the future of us and our children to a better world. And the list is countless. So we have parts like, for example, ticketing. That's the part I'm currently working on, to develop some strategies to implement web3 and NFTs into ticketing, because I saw some stuff over in Singapore, and it's amazing what you can achieve, because you have the problem of fake tickets, of the proof of ownership in a lot of different stages. Like, for example, passports. Criminal people are counterfeiting passports to do bad things, and you cannot do it if it would be on the blockchain. So if you would implement Web3 into documents from governments, other things like tickets and stuff, this is like I think a groundbreaking point where you can help the future to develop to a better part. And to be honest, it's countless. Like, we have the other part on NFTs, which I see on my own. It gives you the power to really change stuff without like having somebody who's coming up to you and giving you $10 million to build a company. You can just start with a couple of $1,000, and the people in your community will love it. Or if they love it, they will support you by buying an NFT and realizing a project together. So you work hand in hand with people all over the world who are just fans of your idea, and you can like prove everything what you are going to do on the blockchain. So I really see a lot of opportunities for Web3, to be honest.
Awesome. Thanks, Sam. And take it to
You're
Justin.
welcome.
Awesome. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Oh, great. I have a bunch, so I won't spend an hour talking about them, but definitely have quite a few that I'm pretty excited about. I'd say the first one is just wallets. I think I've gone through this painful process recently where I've tried to detach myself from a couple old emails, and it's an absolute painstaking process. The fact that I have so many websites and accounts tied back to my email, the fact that my email has been released through data breaches from various companies. There's even websites you can go to now and just type in your email, and it'll show you all of the breaches that it's been a part of. I get spam emails just nonstop. So I've tried to even decouple myself from Gmail, and it's been just so painful because your internet identity is so much tied back to your email. And so that leads me to one of my favorite things in crypto, which is the crypto wallet, where your identity and your sort of your gateway into the internet is all through one interface. In fact, like a modern crypto wallet like MetaMask or some of these other ones really does give you access to some high percentage of every decentralized application on the web with nothing more than a couple clicks. Whereas if you look at my password manager, I have a unique password for every website, and managing those is an absolute nightmare. Sometimes it doesn't sync with my phone, so I have to reset things. It's so bad. And there's a lot of, I think, cool innovations happening at the identity level where these wallets can actually contain personal information. So you can actually go to a website and say, hey, here's my birth date. I don't need to show you my birth date, but we can verify that I'm of a certain age without you actually knowing it. I was on a call with eBay the other day, and they started reading through my security questions and asking me I needed to recover my account. And I'm like, I'm literally giving my social security number, my birth date, every piece of information to some random customer support agent across the world. And I've done this for bank accounts, for so many different things. And I'm like, how is this not illegal? Like, how am I giving my social security, number? Well, Equifax probably lost that already. But anyways, it's such a cool development where you can tie that back to just one wallet. And for people who haven't dabbled in the crypto space, when you create a wallet with crypto, you'll get a key, but that wallet is not the owner of that key. So if you don't like that wallet, or that company starts to do things that with something that you don't agree with, you can just pack up that key, take it to another wallet that does respect your opinion or is building the features that you want, and you can just walk away from that service. It would be the equivalent of being able to just click a button on Gmail and go to Outlook if you didn't like Gmail and like Outlook. That doesn't exist. So wallets are my favorite development. They have a lot of areas where I could critique them, but they're still pretty early. And I'll just run through the other ones that I think are really important that maybe the other panelists can talk about if we want to get into it. But having traveled in a lot of places in the world, there's amazing artists everywhere. And it's pretty frustrating when you go to a poor neighborhood and see amazing artists that sell their work for $5, but then you go to a rich neighborhood and see the exact same work being sold for $1 million. So that's pretty irritating to me, and there isn't a scalable business model for artists yet, especially to tap into a global market. So I'm pretty excited to see NFTs and some of the secondary sale market keep growing. The other thing personally is early adopters can actually have a continuous say in the products. Having been an early adopter and in the investment age, I get to dabble with a lot of products. I'll use the product, I'll make it integral to my life, and then out of nowhere, you'll get an email saying we're getting rid of this product. Good luck. And it's like, that was kind of lame. Like, the founders got rich selling their stocks in the public market, and then you just get rid of the product that I helped you build. Like, it's just a little bit upsetting. So that's another area. And then two more. One is just remote first working. I really think it's cool that a lot of these crypto teams are actually not only building their companies to be remote, but they also have the skills to use remote tools. I've been on so many remote teams, and it's cool that you get to work remote, but you're working with someone who doesn't know how to use Slack or doesn't know how to set up an email forward. And you're just like, oh my gosh, this is a remote team that doesn't know how to use remote tools. So that's painful. So I'm really happy that Web3 teams are sort of baking that into the culture of you have to have a certain level of knowledge, even with the digital landscape, to be a part of it. And they're willing to teach too. So if you are someone who wants to get into that, they're so open to helping beginners, get over that learning curve. And then just lastly, a quick couple ones. I really love the Web3 space overall because it's still much in that experimental playground space. One of my big criticisms of even any government I've seen is that there isn't like these innovation zones where you can experiment with different voting mechanisms or different financial structures or different rights to within certain domains. Whereas crypto really is, you have a bunch of these chains experimenting with, hey, how do you do an election process that's transparent, but also, there's a lot of diligence and it's hard stuff, but there's so many companies now experimenting with these systems that it's just really exciting. And that also goes for the financial systems or even one that's not talked about really at all, customer service. I've been really impressed with how companies have tried to scale their customer support with growing digital communities, because in crypto, if you don't treat your users, there's not a lot of users, in the grand scheme of the world. So if you don't treat your users well, they'll go to another platform. So companies are incentivized to figure out, pain points of their users and actively build the product for the community. There's plenty of flaws I could go into, but that's a level where traditional companies, especially as I've seen in venture, as a company scales, the teams that get the least amount of money is usually customer support, and Amazon, the notable exception. But as the team generally scales, customer support gets the least amount of resources, and you're stuck sometimes on a customer queue line of 2 hours to get a basic question answered, and you have to give over all your personal data to get that basic question answered. So those are a bunch of my things. Thanks.
Yeah, I think you navigated most of them. Thank you, Justin. No, I appreciate it. Teddy.
Yeah, I'll just echo what Justin said. I mean, there are plenty of applications. To me, everything it boils down to one keyword, which is not keyword, but one thing, which is Web3 is a new hope on many levels. It gives us opportunities to kind of get into other things from a different perspective. One of the aspects that I'm particularly interested in is the future of work through Enzyme, and not just how people work remotely, but how we incentivize people to work, how we reorganize ourselves, how we create these new structures that can support the future work. Looking back at what happened during COVID, how people started doing a bunch of other things that they weren't used before, and now using this technology to kind of make our lives easier. So that's really the single most kind of interesting point for me. Other than that, identity, big one. Really just being able to kind of your wallet becomes your identity, and you can easily change it. Going back to what Justin said, but yeah, overall, just new hope.
Yeah, this idea of identity and pseudonymity. I always get that word wrong. This is a critical point on the critical side as well, but I know Professor Rudolph has a few things to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not so deeply into those things like you tech entrepreneurs really are, but you can observe. I mean, this school here, we have the Bison School of Management, you might know that or not, is a school for many founders. So the young people who are absolving the bachelor and the master's programs, many of them are founding companies, and many of them are very successful entrepreneurs. Many of them even have built unicorns, 15 of them, I think. And most of those people who have built those unicorns, basically, they founded their companies back in the 0 years of the century. And I'm continuously basically discussing with the students, and we have the observation that what is currently going on with Web3 and the blockchain and these technologies seems to be like a new gold rush. And you have confirmed that because you said there are so many things to do. So many things have already been done, and so many things are still there to be done. And you still have the chance to be a first mover and benefit from the first mover advantage. So therefore, the technology is absolutely fascinating. And these things that you were talking about, wallets and NFTs and Bored Apes and CryptoPunks and whatever you buy and where you use it, I don't know, in the sandbox, in the metaverse, or wherever. But at least what you see is there's such a lot of innovation, such a lot of creative energy and creative innovation which you find there, which makes it very, very exciting. Because it's a new technology which we haven't by far seen the potential that this technology really creates. And at the same time, Nicholas asked me to be a little bit also on the bad guy side. So one thing that I really would like to make sure, and obvious to everybody, I find it as fascinating as all of you younger people find it fascinating. At the same time, it's a new technology, and the new technology comes together with challenges which have to be solved. So the fact that this word that you are using all of the time and have difficulties to pronounce it, pseudonymity, this is a big chance. And Justin, you have outlined that how much it helps you to basically interact with business partners and to interact in different digital social environments. But at the same time, it also comes together with some risks which are there in that market. I mean, if there is a threat to the blockchain technology, it has a lot to do with anonymity. I mean, we have already countries where the governance systems are not looking very positively on those new technologies. China, for instance, where ICOs are to a certain extent limited. I'm also not sure whether monetary policy is seen exclusively positive, even though it is absolutely clear. I mean, I know, of course, that Bitcoin is only an example, but not the last development of having a currency based on the blockchain, because there are so many weaknesses associated to Bitcoins. But it is absolutely possible to initiate a currency on the blockchain which doesn't have these disadvantages that Bitcoin or even Ethereum has. Ethereum, as you all know, of course, is much more flexible based on those smart contracts. But nevertheless, how would a society react if the autonomy to structure its own monetary policy is challenged by blockchains? I mean, if you would be a citizen of, let's say, North Korea, I hope I don't violate anyone who is coming from North Korea, but at least, I mean, if you are in North Korea, the central bank system is not a trustworthy system. And of course, you're better off if you store your money on the blockchain in a certain wallet and so on, and then you can transfer it into countries abroad and everything. If you are, however, in an environment like the European environment or the American environment, or let's say the Chinese environment, where you have comparatively reliable central bank systems, I'm really curious to see how those central bank systems are going to react if you only focus on digital currencies. And then there are so many other things which might even threat the decision processes that we have in our democratic societies. Because you can do so many things, and that means you can accumulate so much power on this new technology, that those things have to be thought at a certain point of time. I'm absolutely aware of the fact that we are still brand new, even though I have seen that you have founded your companies, one of you at least already, I think 10 years ago, where I did not even have a clue that these things exist, but it's still very, very young. But the more mature those technologies get, the more people are going to be involved, the more power and the more opinion building process is going to be pushed on the blockchain technology, on Web3, and on these kind of technologies. The more we will also have to think about how all of that can be channeled in a way that we still have democratic power, democratic legitimated power, and also not, I mean, I was talking about gold rush in the beginning. A gold rush is a very good thing, but in the end, we always have we always have to balance freedom and your own freedom and the freedom of the others out in free societies, right? I mean, if you're not a free society anymore if only one person has the freedom, namely the one who is the owner of a certain blockchain that everybody wants, so to say. So monopolism, for instance, we know that monopolism is not a good thing for the development of a society, and therefore I'm very excited about the chances. By the way, something that nobody of you has mentioned so far is, but also managing contracts between two parties where you have an intermediary in between, notary intermediary or something like that. That could also be replaced. I'm very excited about all of that. But at the same time, I would expect that a societal discussion is going to start how the power of those web3 technologies can be bundled in the way that they still support democratic and free societies. And I could imagine that we will have more opportunities to talk about this point later, but that's my point on your question, Nicholas.
Yeah, and to kind of maybe take a mirror back to Teddy and Justin, what you were saying about the pseudonymity. Last month, the founders of course, the Bored Ape Yacht Club, which is probably the most visible manifestation of NFTs to the outside world, their names were doxed, meaning they were revealed to the public through a post in BuzzFeed. And this is going back again to the kind of idea of what Web3 would be, according to Mr. Wood, Gavin Wood, that if you wanted privacy online, you can have it. But my question is this widespread pseudonymity where nobody knows who you are. We know you by your profile photo, which is not an actual photo of you, and your username. This is kind of this is what they have built to be a vision for the future, a world of decentralized autonomous organizations and NFTs and cryptocurrencies where people cannot be certain who benefits or what anyone's true motivations are. And some argue that this idea where anyone should be able to do anything that they want online without anyone knowing what it is, or arguing for a world in which a world is where no one is held accountable. So how do you guys respond to this, other than the fact these benefits that Justin outlined of being pseudonymous, maybe preventing censorship, but now we have a world where everything is pseudonymous and nobody really knows who's winning and who's losing.
I can hop on this one, if it's okay, Nicholas.
Yeah, please, Sam.
Because I can see it from the inside NFT perspective very good, because that's what I saw like the last 3 months every day on searching on projects. I think in this part, the market regulates itself, because what I and my team realize, and I think Justin and Teddy are the same opinion, is that if you buy into NFT projects, the market developed to, if I want to buy, it could be a red flag for me if the owners are not doxed, because there was so much scam around in NFT projects that people lost the trust in just buy into it. I like, it was like 6-7 months ago, just buy everything you find and it makes you money and it will be a solid project. Now things changed. So this pseudonymity really is just for the buyers a good part, because if I want to buy into a project, I can I don't need to dox myself if I want to buy it. Like Justin mentioned, it's my wallet. I don't need to get spam emails or maybe upsell opportunities or something else. But as an owner of a project, I need to dox myself, because people don't trust like anybody in the market at the moment who's not doxed. And so you take some responsibility, and that's not something which what a government or the government told us to do, like, hey, you need to dox yourself to do this kind of projects. It just came up like the market develops, and I think it will develop more and more over the next years, because as like everybody mentioned, we are still early stage. And I think after a couple of years, this problem will be solved by itself. So that's my opinion. I'm not sure if you guys share it.
Yeah, I'd like to add a couple things too. Yeah, I agree, Sam. And I think if the problem becomes big enough, so actually, to back up, to make a comparison to just the normal way, and there's plenty of I was just reading a report out of England of a lady who joined a company, and she found out a couple days in that the website was fake, and the people she was talking to on the executive team were all one person. Like, it was basically 6 fake emails that were all going to one person. They were pretending to be multiple employees, and they had to kind of do this big de-engineering process to realize that this whole company was fake. Now, that doesn't mean like excuse crypto to go off and do terrible things and to get rid of the pseudo anonymity problem. But I think if it does become a big enough problem, one of the nice things about blockchain is that there's other ways that just like when you go to buy a car, you can just look up a couple reports. You don't actually have to understand how an engine works to read a consumer report. I think we'll have probably similar social metric systems for these anonymous people, because everything they do is etched to the blockchain. If someone comes out of nowhere and says, "Hey, I'm building this great project, you should just trust me," and we look at their wallet and they have no history, you start to go, wait a minute, who is this person? Whereas if a person who, even if you don't know them, but has been actively engaged in the crypto community, and they have this NFT gallery of, hey, they got a token for being the core contributor to this project and a token for being a DAO member of this project, you can start to actually realize that, oh, wow, there's cool verifiable ways to prove that, okay, they're anonymous, but they have done what they said they've done. It's actually another use case that I didn't talk about earlier, but I think that there's probably going to be new token standards. Vitalik has pitched them before, and he hasn't been the first to pitch them, where you get these tokens that really are more of a resume of your participation on chains, and they're not tradable, or maybe they're not even worth anything, but there's sort of that verification that you've done something and you can prove it. So I think that's kind of cool. I think the other thing too is that a lot of the, like in venture, these teams who get funded, they might be anonymous to the public, but there's a venture person behind the scene who's actually shook their hand or met them online. So you can sort of vouch people in other ways. That has been a tricky part of my investing, has been, okay, who is this team? I don't know them, but who vouches for these people? Do they have a good set of investors that trust this team? So there's other ways that you can do it. And I think we'll just come up with new fancy ways to do credits, kind of like a credit scoring system. I wouldn't be surprised if there are some sort of social metric or social clout score that gets attached to people's online identity with crypto, and you can do it really easily because their accounts are all readable. I don't know how this will work with ZK snarks and some of the next gen tech, but it all seems theoretically possible if the problem would get big enough.
If I may respond to that, I absolutely agree, and I think anything can be done based on the blockchain. And you basically can have clear names, and you can have trust in it. It's quite remarkable that we have a trustless system, but we need to have trust in order to want to be engaged with a certain counterparty. And that's really my point. I really think that trust remains to be essential in the end. So a couple of principles which we have from the older economy remains to be essential, and that is quite important. So therefore, I think the point is not only what can be done, but also what is going to be required to be done in order to have not such a high degree of anonymity, in order to basically prevent people from interacting with people who are criminals in the end.
And that is an interesting point, because, of course, that has been a big criticism of NFTs and crypto so far, is that it's used widespread use by the criminal activity. And of course, criminals use, for example, electricity too. It doesn't make electricity bad, but the idea is that there is, cryptocurrency is in a very good position to be used for criminal behavior. But yeah, I don't. That's a good point. And
oh, sorry, I just had a comment, but I'll wait. I'll hold.
Yeah. No, but the idea that, Justin, of what you're saying is we would have a social system to vet other users, so that even if they're pseudonymous, they will still be vetted through their previous actions, which are permanent on their wallet, attached to their wallet.
And there are some systems already that do this. They don't integrate, with blockchains and build this sophisticated profile, but you can do some Googling for, top influencers in the scene and you'll come up with a couple websites where you can see, anonymous people and their contributions. Everyone does it a little bit different way. Some do it more manual. It's more art than science a lot of the times, but it's already seen that community is building to sort of, check these types of profiles.
So I would push back on that. With one, comment about the wallet being kind of your instant pass everywhere, that replaces your email, which is used for everything now. I mean, doesn't that still invite in kind of an all-in-one center that can be, of course, now an all-in-one center for being attacked or being targeted for scams? And correct me if I'm wrong, but if somebody has your wallet ID, they can put whatever they want into it, and you wouldn't know. And potentially this might be a token or something on the chain that would contain a virus. And we've seen this happen before with scams. How do you guys respond to that?
I mean, not just the wallet thing, all these issues, and I'm sure we'll touch upon other issues as well, are not specifically Web3 issues. And you said it yourself, Nicholas, for electricity, for example. Criminals may use electricity as a way to harm someone, something, but it's not necessarily making the electricity bad. The same goes for Web3. I would blame it on the people overall. It's not the technology. It's us who are utilizing the technology the way we do right now. And for the wallet specific example, if someone sends you something, I think we may need to kind of shift our way of thinking about what the ownership means. Because if I receive something from someone that I don't know, that doesn't necessarily mean that I bought that thing, but that's also visible on the chain. People can see whether a transaction was made by me, or it was like just sent from another side. So there are ways to know that, and we shouldn't assume that if someone sends, I don't know, the new NFT project to Gary Vee, that Gary Vee owns that project right now, and it's a credible project and everyone should buy in. Which also brings me to another point that is like the greed of us. Yeah, we talk that greed is good. It's a gold rush right now, but too much greed is harmful for the system right now. And again, I would blame it on the people, not on the technology. All these NFT projects, all these other scam situations are coming for just people that are not doing their research and they're just jumping in projects, buying, and then just burning out. But again, it's on us, and we should kind of rethink how we approach the whole thing, and maybe educate a little bit the others in the jumping in the space.
I would, if I may, Nicholas, I would fully agree. The technology is not bad, and the technology offers so many opportunities and also so many innovation options. As much as electricity back in the 18th century or the 17th century, whenever it was, or as much as the steam engine when it was introduced in the 18th century. It's definitely not the technology, but what I'm wondering is whether how to apply the technology needs regulation in the end in order to really regulate criminal behavior, social misbehavior, and these things. And I'm quite convinced that this is something which is going to come, because in the end, at least according in our Western countries, I think in the end everything needs to be under democratic control. And I'm quite sure that needs some efforts for regulating the technology. Maybe not now because we are that early, but I'm quite sure that this discussion is going to come.
Yeah, I think when I said, for example, New Hope, one of the things that I really like about this is the redistribution of wealth and power, which is, and I think we should get out of that mental thinking that we need to be regulating or controlling things. As Sam earlier said, the market would regulate itself to some extent. And I don't think we need to specifically create other organizations that can then regulate the Web3 space, the different blockchains, different projects, but rather establishing those as principles in the code, so then the code becomes law. And then we follow what's written, created by a community, not by single individual organizations. And maybe we can talk about DAOs as well, and how that can actually help us improve this and the future of work. But this is just my 2 cents on that.
I would. Yeah, sorry, Justin.
I was just gonna kind of jump around. I think there's a few kind of questions in the air, but I do think wallets need a lot more improvement. Now, to be fair, wallets aren't right now the gatekeeper of your identity in crypto. There's different identity solutions. And those are separated from wallets. There might be an all-in-one solution that I'm not aware of, but the main companies like MetaMask, they're not holding your private information at this point. And there has to be a lot of innovation there to sort of, Nicholas, to your point. if you are using that wallet as a one-stop shop for your personal information and your wallet and all these types of things, what type of security needs to go into that? And I won't bore everyone with those details, but there are some really cool wallets like Argent who are experimenting with social recovery, which is basically the idea you give out your key, you give out a little bit of your key to a couple trusted contacts, and you can sort of rebuild your wallet back in. I also think if those things become an issue, you're going to start to see a lot more levers with wallets on things like, like on BlockFi, which is a centralized provider. They have this wonderful security feature where you can just basically say, it doesn't matter who you are. If you try to withdraw money from this wallet, there's a 24 or maybe it's 48 hours stop before a certain amount can go out of your wallet. So it gives the owner a chance to be like, hey, no, this is a scam. This is not me. So there is all these stops you can put in place. But the issue just hasn't, crypto's not big enough yet for, there's so many big problems at crypto that's just one of those lingering ones at the bottom that if someone wanted to jump in today and start working on it, they could. But I don't know what the incentive would be compared to the greater problems and opportunities that are currently in crypto. So I think they're noted, but they're not something that's being addressed. And also the NFT thing, I think, is a really big problem with OpenSea. And it's kind of jumping to another topic. It's actually something that, being in venture capital, I some days I'm really proud of the companies, and sometimes I'm really like ashamed of the industry. I mean, if you look at Uber's past, Uber basically at some point realized that they could just take fines and operate in cities because they could make more money than the government could fine them. So they just operated illegally in most cities around the world and continue to do so today. And I think crypto is kind of getting away with that at some degree, and OpenSea is starting to make noise and how much is fake. So I do think that's a big problem, and I don't think the industry has a great solution for it yet, but I just wanted to sort of to acknowledge that other side.
So, and on that same issue of, we break the law until the regulation catches up. And going also back to Teddy's point and Sam's point that the market will regulate itself. I mean, this is kind of the historic idea of laissez-faire capitalism, where, leave the free market to the whims and it will be best for the people. But that's turned out not actually to be true in history. And, so, when you say that, these scammers, that it will eventually be worked out eventually, once we have a social system where everyone can validate each other, I don't see the reality in history where this has been proven before. When you let things go to the forces of the market, that they eventually work out. So how is that any different now with cryptocurrency and NFTs?
I think there's a difference in it because now it's about like, where do I invest money? Like scams start when people start to give money to some people who promise them to do something. That's like the basics. So if I go and I invest money into something, it doesn't matter of web3 or web2 or real life. I start making my due diligence. I do my own research. I start getting into it, and I ask other people what they think about it. Like what I do in real life at the moment, I do the same in NFTs. I check the project. I check if it looks good to me. I check if the owners are docs. I check the smart contract. I check the community stuff, which is like, for example, in a DAO, what they want to do and what they delivered in the past, like Justin said, and then I build trust. It can be still a scam, but then I see what happens. Like I can see, okay, I paid them like $500 for one NFT in Ether, and I can see the wallets, what they did with the money. I can see everything on the blockchain. So after a couple of experiences, you start to know how to make a better research on this project. And if you don't know, I think people underestimate the crypto community or the NFT community and how people really like to help you and really like to teach you. Because for me, what I saw was a very, very nice and friendly community. I just stepped into NFT 6 months ago, so I'm new to the space too. But there are people who will tell you, check this. They will help you to read the smart contract, check the wallets behind it, like Justin said. So I think the market can regulate itself to a certain point, like it is everywhere, but better than in real life. And that was the point I wanted to make. So I think we will not solve the problem of scams 100%, which is like not possible, but to a certain level, we can help each other. And I think this is the main idea behind crypto.
Yeah, I've been really impressed too with the crypto community's ability to do this. Like, I'm failing to come up with exact examples, but there, if you just even did a quick Google search for, government seized crypto funds or something like that, you'll find plenty of examples where there is a hack that takes place, and there is a almost instant coordinated effort between centralized exchanges and even some decentralized exchanges to essentially freeze those funds if they go through any channel where somebody, a willing actor, is willing to stop the sort of hit the, come down with the hammer. And it's been really impressive to see. I mean, even I don't know which United States intelligence officer or where this exactly came from, but the only rhetoric I could find from the US on Russia is that they're not concerned that Russia is going to use crypto to evade sanctions. And we can dive into why, all of that kind of the specifics there. But if you even the current system, it's really hard to get big troughs of money through. And the SEC has sued more people than I can keep up with when they do see a big scam. And it's incredible to me that you can actually build a system where you actually don't necessarily need to put the existing regulations like anti-money laundering and these types of things already cover a big amount of the crypto scams that come through. And these people get caught. It might be years down the road, but I mean, as opposed to the current system, and you can go on Twitch and find Twitch streamers like Kit Boga who've made a career off of scamming scammers because traditional scammers are so rampant. I get like 10 scam calls a day, and that's not a joke. And there's nobody I can report that to. There's no way I can trace who it goes to. Like, it's awful, the current scam system. Whereas at least with crypto, it's still bad, but at least there's like optimistic reasons to believe that the system's already starting to handle some of them as opposed to the better system. And I'll just like summarize it with, like, for me, blockchain is not perfect, but the problems I see in Web2, crypto doesn't have perfect solutions, but they at least have some solutions. Whereas Web 2 has just been clueless to solve problems like scamming. And, I don't know if you've noticed, but every time you go to a website, the burden is always on me as the user to prove that I'm legit. So it's like, okay, enter your password, enter your 2FA code, solve this puzzle that identify every tree in this mountain forest over here, and you got to make sure you've been through these terrible experiences. So it's always on me to prove that I'm not the bad actor. Whereas with crypto, you're not assumed to be the bad actor. You're assumed to be honest and good. And then there's all these little systems that will slowly downvote you into oblivion if you abuse the system too much. So certainly problems, but I'm pretty optimistic about what's been happening.
I'll put a first comment from the text, from first question from the comments, excuse me, to kind of just based off what we're talking about now, which is really that, it's an optimistic viewpoint that, people will eventually, because of social pressure or social proof, act responsibly. But at the same time, having no regulation body and no governmental system in the beginning will inevitably allow people to come into the system new and scam people off the bat, and people that are not educated in it. And this brings me to a second question from Shelley, who asks, what about the older and frailer? What about the people that are not really tech savvy? Is this, are we going to, like, is this a very long-term view where we're going to have to wait until the young generation that is born and bred in Web3 is able to be the old ones to take it over? Or are we going to make this accessible to people who don't have the capacity to learn these, how to vet an NFT that appeared in your wallet, or how to see whether a pseudonymous contact is legit or not? How do you guys think about? What do you guys think about this?
I would like to make one remark. I oppose the statement that the young minds are the fit minds, and that the older minds are the not so fit minds. But of course, I mean, the point. I mean, what Shelley is writing, and what the fellow before has been writing, and also what they said, it's not so much about criminal behavior. What threatens the functioning of a system is not the technology itself. So in other words, the technology is exciting and good. What threatens is one thing, at least, probably among others, is that monopolies are going to be established. So in other words, if there in a certain form if there is a monopolistic supplier which excludes other suppliers, be it younger people or older people, be it new ideas or older ideas. This is exactly what we have seen in the Industrial Revolution. This is exactly what we have seen when B2C marketing has been taking place over the internet. I mean, if you look at a company like Amazon, one of the biggest threats for the stability of the competitional economy is that a company like Amazon gets really a monopolist. Or look at Meta. So the threat is that that no competition is taking place anymore, and therefore, I don't think that the market regulates itself in that sense. So there must be somebody who makes sure that monopolies cannot be built. And now we have a new technology. Not many people are on it, and we're already observing a couple of almost monopolies. So digital exchanges, for instance, or APIs, or there are examples where there are companies, or even wallets. I think there are examples where there are markets which are almost monopolized by one company, and that is what I mean with regulation. So in order to basically have a system which is as unregulated as possible, you need some regulations in order to make sure that not one player is monopolizing everything. And that is a threat to any new technology as much as to the blockchain technology.
Well, I'd say a quick comment to that. The one thing that, just to kind of summarize the differentiating factor of blockchain, is the biggest protocols. Even if you're talking about Binance or Coinbase, they're all leveraging open source protocols. And there isn't an open source protocol for Google or Microsoft or these companies. Once they have you, they lock you into that ecosystem, and they make it incredibly painful to leave. Just to go back to that email example, I am signed into so many websites with Google that it would take me weeks, maybe even months, to decouple that mess. I'm talking full time working on this. Whereas with Ethereum, if I don't want Ethereum, I can be off Ethereum within a day. Like, it wouldn't even be hard, honestly. You can pack up your money, you can send it through a bridge to another network, you can get another wallet instantly, and you're done with Ethereum. So that's one big differentiator. And I'm not saying that's going to regulate itself, but the fact that the core protocols are all open source, and the fact that if you don't like it as a developer, that Ethereum is going to lock you in. I'm not saying Ethereum is doing this, but let's say Ethereum all of a sudden starts to become this evil organization of core developers. They can't lock you in. All that has to happen is a developer has to build a bridge on this open source protocol, and you can transfer your funds off that network. So there's cool things that you can do there.
While Ethereum doesn't lock you in, I mean, I've been reading that most of the interactions with Ethereum have been done through really two companies. It's Alchemist and Infura, and these are the APIs that connect everyone to the blockchain. And so whether or not the blockchain itself will be able to be monopolized, you have these APIs that are and they're the Infura is the parent company of what is it? The guys that own Bored Ape Yacht Club. So yeah, all this money that's coming from major VCs too. I mean, they're controlled by a very small number of private held companies. And when you look at MetaMask as well, that's it. MetaMask also owned by Infura, parent company Consensus, I believe. Consensus. It's become the dominant wallet. OpenSea essentially it controls the NFT market. They processed 84% of the peer-to-peer transactions in December 2021, and you have these VCs now really buying each other up at rapid pace. So where this decentralized future that has been promised to us through the Ethereum blockchain, because nobody actually wants to host their own servers. And that was something that Moxie Marlinspike mentioned in his critique, was that we prefer using the easier option of other people's servers. So in that way, these companies, which are the middleman between us and the blockchain, are actually gaining so much power that none of it can actually be third-party verified. It's whatever goes through them is what we view, and the blockchain may be telling the truth, but nothing is actually hosted on the blockchain. Well, when it comes to NFTs, that's another question. Is a lot of when you're purchasing an NFT, the essence of what is in that smart contract, the essence of what is in that NFT is not actually on the blockchain. It's just pointing to a site, a website, that is, can be changed and nobody will know. So how do we then prevent the monopolization of companies like this from happening in Web3?
That's definitely true. I mean, OpenSea and a couple big players, but like in the grand scheme of things, we're again still super early in this, and I don't consider them as monopolies. Just some companies that were kind of created something and made it more convenient for people to interact with blockchain. But back to what Justin said, if you are locked into some other service, Web2 service, Google, Amazon, whatever, you cannot easily get out of their, be it for hosting, email, whatever other services you use these days. While with blockchain, you can easily move to another place. And that's the benefit of it. Although Infura exists, I'm pretty sure many people are working actually on some competitors that are gonna surpass Infura pretty soon. For example, the NFT marketplace OpenSea right now, there are thousands of other marketplaces popping up every day, which are not yet known because OpenSea has been there for some time, but that doesn't make OpenSea the de facto kind of player in that space. So they will get out-competed because that's how the ecosystem works. On the NFT side, on the IPFS and where things are stored, that's an issue with what's happening right now with like the NFT space. Because not many people realize that when you buy the actual NFT, it doesn't exist in the smart contract, but it's a reference to somewhere else like IPFS storage. And once that storage is kind of turned off, you won't be able to access it. But there are other networks that are solving this problem. Like Arby, for example, is one of the companies that you can put stuff there. Is decentralized. It's stored across multiple servers. And for example, the Pizza on Chain project that we were working on, the NFT is actually stored on chain. So there are ways to store some amount of data on the blockchain. So we are working on constantly kind of improving this and making it more decentralized and less dependent on one large organization.
Yeah, when I read Moxie's, I think when I read criticisms of crypto, what I often see is he's sort of like, I don't know the word for it, like a crypto gypsy or something. He wants to come in and then leave to the next cool tech part of the world. And Moxie was sort of like that. You have this super literate, really respected cryptographer who built an amazing application, who dabbles with blockchain for a couple days and then writes this page and then points out some criticisms, very valid criticisms, and then Vitalik, the founder of Ethereum, responds to them and gives them very pointed details, point by point, acknowledges his points, and even concedes that they are absolute problems. But then Moxie doesn't respond, and it's like, wait, are you trying to help the scene? Or are you just trying to criticize it? And for me, when I hear these criticisms, it kind of does get a little exhausting from the centralized point, because the industry is absolutely centralized. Like if you wanted to really start with decentralization, you'd have to rip out telecom infrastructure. But there's only a few companies really working on how do you access the internet without going through a centralized system. Like Helium's one of them, but their 5G networks are going to take a long time if they even work. So you kind of have to pick your battles. There's thousands of core developers in this scene. I mean, there's probably hundreds of thousands of people building on it, but the actual core developers, you're talking about probably less than 10,000. I mean, I think Ethereum, the last report I saw from a VC firm, had 200 to 300 core developers unique per month contributing to the code base. Facebook said they have 10,000 developers working on AR and VR alone. The numbers of this scene are still so tiny, so the developers have to pick the battles that they can actually fight. And I think the MetaMask example is a really good point to kind of go back to that. The interesting thing with MetaMask is even though they're still owned by that parent company still doesn't own your funds in your wallet. So even if even though MetaMask is owned by a parent company, if you don't like MetaMask, you can kind of just, again, get out of the scene and go to another wallet. So that's even a cool example of like a baby step towards decentralization, where you have a centralized entity running decentralized products. And I still think that's a really cool step forward. And I'll just end with, Teddy, I totally agree with the NFTs. Like there's so many problems with NFTs and the way people perceive them, and it's definitely ripe for scams, and it makes me really uncomfortable.
Bringing a question in also from the audience, why can't it's a good question. Why can't we just put all the data contained within an NFT right on the blockchain?
There are technical limitations. The short answer, there's limited amount of data that can be stored in the contract. And I referenced the project that I was working on, Pizza on Chain, where you can store the images of the pizza on the chain directly, but there's not like direct way as you would save your image on your local machine. You have to come up with some creativity and kind of find different ways and by drawing it on the fly and all that. Think of, for example, Ethereum and NFT as this large, slow computer right now that's like processing something, but then there's limitations. We will see, maybe it won't be Ethereum, maybe it will be another network, but we will see improvements in these areas as well, where other maybe blockchains or other improvements on the core Ethereum will actually make it possible to store more stuff in there once the adoption is larger. But for now, it's like technically limited.
Got it. Okay. And I guess going back to the regulation question from Professor Rudolph, we do have a question from the audience that I want to pose, which is, what do you think would be the regulation by the ECB or the US? And how would that even be, how will we even go about regulating the crypto industry?
Well, I think we've seen a lot of, Sam, sorry, do you want to go? I've been doing a lot of talking. Okay.
No, you go ahead, please.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think, and kind of go back to some of the things I said earlier, there's already regulation happening across the globe on these fronts. Now, whether or not that's baked into, I don't know if it's baked into any actual documentation, but whenever there is a hack, whenever there is these things, these companies, these centralized entities that still, for the most part, control the fiat on ramps into crypto, those are all under the same regulations that they've always been. So these companies still have to abide by those. So if there is, a reported hack or some sort of problem with a certain amount of funds, money laundering, these types of things, governments already actively work with the exchanges to say, hey, you need to halt these funds until we figure out if any of these funds come through your channels and you can trace them back, we need to figure out a way to lock them up. And there's so many great cases of the government sort of decoupling all of the ways that this money gets moved and eventually finding a slip up from the hackers, and they can identify who they are and then go after them. So it's already happening. I don't know if there needs to be more, but it's already active.
I also have a little bit of an answer to Andreas' question. Andreas, is your photo, is that a Euromasters photo? Looks like we have Euromasters in your background, which was exciting. No, I mean, I think one question is, of course, how would the ECB or another central bank regulate cryptocurrencies? And the other question, which I find even more interesting, is should the ECB and other central banks try to regulate cryptocurrencies? I mean, the answer to the first question is I'm quite sure that the central bank systems have an incentive to try to regulate that. So, and what you're observing is that central banks, also the ECB, is trying to implement a system which combines the benefits of a digital currency with the benefits of an intermediary-based currency. So the digital euro. So these are projects, and you can read a lot of white papers on the ECB website on that one. And this is also the case for the Federal Reserve System, and also for the Chinese central bank, I think even more than for the two others. The other question, however, is if we as citizens should wish ourselves that the central bank is regulating that system. Because, I mean, even though I'm not perfectly in line with the argumentation of free markets and markets which regulate themselves, with what my previous speakers basically said, but based on that argument, we could say, why should the ECB regulate cryptocurrencies if the majority of the people basically wants to pay everything in bitcoins, which in the case of bitcoins is impossible because of the setup of the currency. But it is thinkable that a cryptocurrency is going to be created which has all of the advantages of a good fiat money currency like the euro, and more than that. And then it's even possible that this currency, that the people are basically opting with their feet and start to trade based on that new currency. So if Amazon, for instance, or if Tesla, Elon Musk basically was experimenting a little bit with saying that he would be willing to accept Dogecoins or Bitcoins for Tesla cars. But imagine that really Amazon, a huge company, is accepting a cryptocurrency. Then people would want to have this cryptocurrency. Then if you think that further, beyond a certain point, people would want to earn their money in cryptocurrencies rather than in euros and rather than in US dollars. And the question that you can ask is, why should anyone regulate that if the people really want it? And my answer would be still, and I would be very curious to hear your viewpoints, it needs to be regulated to beyond a certain point, because a free society needs choices. And if you have such a currency which is dominant in comparison to the euro, it might then after a while also get dominant in comparison to the dollar. And it might then be a world currency in the end. And that means there's no competition anymore. Then you have a monopolized thing. And no competition is the end of all innovation. No competition means that the world is developing itself backwards, and therefore monopolies have to be prevented, have to be avoided, and therefore in order to get back to your question, Andreas, I think the ECB has an interest to regulate cryptocurrencies in order to make sure its own survival. But this is not the reason why it should be regulated. The reason why it should be regulated is not because of the motivation of the ECB, but because of the motivation of living in a free society. In a free society, that's what I'm convinced about, needs choices.
I think just to leave a quick comment on this, because I think that we are still too early to talk about how the world will be, because now we're saying one big currency could be bigger than euro, bigger than USD, bigger than other cryptocurrencies. But what if another case will start like it's now? We have euro, we have USD, people change money into crypto, change it back into fiat, use this. Maybe there will be some other cryptocurrency, at the moment, and people will adapt all of them. It's like, I don't know. And me personally, I have different fiat currencies at home, euro, USD, dirham. I think it will be the same with cryptos, like not one big cryptocurrency and you pay everything in it, but like the competition is live, and the competition is happening every day, every second in the crypto community. And the people want competition. Like, people using crypto love to explore new projects, love to invest in new projects, love to read about new projects, and people are starting to develop better and better and better technologies and better projects. And so I think we are still too early in time to say, yeah, there will be just one. I think we will have a lineup of 5 to 10 cryptocurrencies working everywhere in like 20 years, for example.
If I can make a direct answer, I fully agree. But what we are observing here is a platform economy. And we know that platform economies have a tendency to build monopolies. That's the same like with Amazon, which basically, if people get used to the Amazon platform, they always will order at the Amazon platform. Or with Facebook, like 10 years back, here in Germany, there was a Facebook clone called StudiVZ. I don't know if they've heard of that. That was Vea Ulla who has founded that, Michael Brehm. And that survived only 1.5 years before people figured out it doesn't make any sense to have a competing platform, because if everybody is on the platform of Facebook, why should I be on a smaller platform? If everybody in the end is paying with that cryptocurrency, why should I try out another currency? And that's the reason. So my point would be, platform economies are different from other forms of economies.
Or OpenSea, or Infura as an API.
Yeah.
I mean, once people get used to these, maybe there's a bunch coming up, and there's smaller actors. Maybe there's a bunch of smaller wallets coming in that are better. But this idea of social proof and getting used to things, it makes things hard to change, and eventually leads. It may be irrational to stick with this product, but we're used to it, and it's human nature.
To answer directly on this one, I think, or I would disagree, because I think when you first jump into crypto, like mainstream goes crypto, or it goes NFT, then you will stop by on OpenSea. But once you start to have a certain level of interest in this kind of projects and NFT projects, you will jump on other marketplaces where the user experience is greater, where the royalty fees for the platform are not so high, and all of this stuff. And I see like a lot of people are going away from OpenSea, and I could bet that in 5 years, like Teddy said, OpenSea will be outperformed by 5 or 10 other marketplaces making a better job in what they do. So I think it's just like you jump onto NFTs, it's OpenSea where you can check everything, and then from there you go somewhere else, because you will not stay forever on this marketplace. And I think this will be something we will see, but I can't see the future, but I think it will be like this.
Yeah, I'm sort of in a similar camp, like, and also the amount of competition that I've seen has been just in the last 2 years has been crazy. I think I don't know the last numbers, but DYDX is a fully decentralized exchange, and if you put it in the total rankings, it's up. The only person it's behind is Binance Global. The rest it's above. Even Coinbase, given on its day, they are sometimes like this or ones like this. A lot of factors depend, but DYDX and Uniswap are competing with Coinbase, which is by far the largest centralized exchange. So I think we're already seeing like there's really healthy competition in crypto. And if you go into like a site like CoinMarketCap, this stuff is really easy to see. You can sort by exchanges, both on the centralized side and decentralized, and you'll see just a plethora. I mean, you still have your top one like Binance, but I'd also argue Binance gives a lot of valuable services. So it's fighting these decentralized exchanges to maintain its top rank by giving a lot of money back, by building services that give money back to their users. If they stop doing that, there will be a replacement for them very quickly. They're a unique bucket because of how much they put into resources. And I mean, to be fair, Binance also builds a chain that they welcome you to use and to get off their services. So when's the last time you saw Gmail say, hey, or Google, hey, go use this alternative search engine. We don't care. It's cool. We're just going to release that one over there. So even centralized companies are doing really weird things like making these decentralized services to almost compete with themselves. So that's like super odd too. And going back to the MetaMask example, the fact that you have a consensus company that's now valued at $7 billion that builds a product that's semi-open source and allows you to withdraw your key and leave their service, that's unheard of in my industry. I don't know of any company that wouldn't lock you into a product. So I think it's really cool. I mean, it could still ladder up into a centralized service, but it's not what's being seen right now. And to kind of hit on the Afura point, I think that's a concerning point, but there's been enough really, really core developers of Ethereum who've addressed how you decouple that problem, and the incentives just aren't there to do it because it works. If it stops working, there would be a bigger effort to do that. But as you've seen right now, a lot of the concern, at least in the Ethereum camp, has been, hey, let's get over to proof of stake because we're using too much energy. So that's been their priority. If the problem tomorrow becomes the Infura API, then you'll see a shift in attention, and that's kind of cool too. The community can shift to the problems that are the most important at any given time. It still could end up as a monopoly, but it's not what we're seeing.
Yeah, I have a comment from the a question or a comment from the comments from Tucker or Turker, who also I guess is kind of agreeing with you that it could be. It doesn't have to be the one world currency, just as ERC20 tokens on the Ethereum system. I think there can also be a one world infrastructure with many CBDCs and altcoins on them. Yeah, and
what is the platform argument? Yeah. Even though I fully agree with what Justin just said, I'm only saying, nevertheless, we have to be very careful that, I'm also not seeing such a tendency, but we have to be very careful that monopolies are going to be avoided. And what Turker here says is exactly that. That is exactly the way it could come to monopolies.
I would post one more question from the audience that just came up, which is, and then maybe we can get into a little bit about the maybe gas prices, but also proof of work versus proof of stake and how this is going to affect the future of currency. But would it be possible to increase the amount of available number of cryptocurrency to regulate healthy inflation? And who would do that? How is it working? I believe the only, yeah, you guys are the experts on this, but I believe some, whereas Dogecoin has an unlimited amount, Bitcoin, for example, is a little more regulated with regard to how many can be applied to the system.
Yeah, I can jump in, judges or panelists, if anyone
Please,
doesn't mind.
Justin.
I guess two things. The first one is that the fixed number on these change is a little bit misleading. Like, let's say, for example, tomorrow everything goes away and Bitcoin is the de facto. It's the only crypto. It's the only fiat. Bitcoin is divisible by 8 decimal points. So if tomorrow the smallest fraction of a Bitcoin becomes useful, we're not going to talk about, I'm not going to say, hey, can you send me 0.000001 Bitcoin? I'm just going to say, hey, send me 1 Satoshi. Like, we'll change how we talk about money. And the actual amount of supply on these cryptocurrencies is gargantuan if it becomes the de facto standard to the world. Right now, we pin everything to USD. So we still talk about 1.0 Bitcoin is equal to some sort of amount of USD. But if tomorrow crypto becomes king, you can reverse it and go, well, how much is USD worth in Bitcoin? We don't flip that equation right now. So these numbers are fixed, but they're huge. The other thing is that there's been a couple pretty noble attempts at algorithmic stablecoins that attempt to battle this inflation problem, which I actually think is a really valid concern. Is like maybe the government having their pulse on inflation is a really good thing, or at least the best we can do right now. I've seen good arguments for and against it, but there are coins that essentially try to refactor every night, every 24 hours. Stuff like Ampleforth is one, or Amplecoin, I forget the name. But they try to do this. The biggest one, and the reason why I really like the Taro ecosystem, was because of the connection between Luna, which is not a stable coin, but it's a connection to UST, which is, for all practical purposes, equal to 1 USD at any given time. And you can read into how they keep that metric balanced. But it's been doing pretty good, and it's a top 10 by market cap coin, and I think it's only been around for a year or two. It's very young in its modern form. So there are a couple attempts to do it, but it's still an experiment. Like, we don't know if that's something you can maintain over the course of decades because we haven't had enough time.
I also would have an opinion on that, if I may. Yeah.
Please, Professor.
But I think that monetary policy, as Christine Lagarde is doing it, is algorithm based. So they are looking at the economy, they're looking at inflation, of course, they're looking at monetary supply and monetary demand. And of course, those people who are working at the central bank, they all studied monetary economics, and they belong to the best of the best in their respective field. But in the end, I think it is an algorithm-based decision methodology that the central bank council is doing. And if that is the case, I'm very positive and optimistic that it is possible to implement a cryptocurrency which is somehow AI-based and which does at least such a good monetary policy as the 16 people in the European Central Bank Council are able to implement. I think this is thinkable. This is definitely not going to be Bitcoin, because Bitcoin must be a deflationary currency if it would be used by many occasions. So deflation basically is putting economic growth down, obviously, but it can be something else. It can be something which is smart contract based and implements those smart algorithms.
I think this is a good segue into, something that, unless anyone has anything to say on this topic, because now we get into this, merging the ideas of cryptocurrency and regulation, the idea of what's happening right now with Russia and Ukraine, and we've seen on one hand donations going to Ukraine at record-breaking amounts through cryptocurrency. We've also seen Russia being able to evade sanctions by also being invested in cryptocurrency. And last week or 2 weeks ago, we've had the Ukrainian government asking these exchanges to sanction certain people and prevent certain Russian individuals, if not all Russians, I believe it was all Russians at one point, from accessing cryptocurrency. And there's been genuine pushback from the crypto community that this is against the goals of what cryptocurrency was invented for in the beginning. And I wonder how, if cryptocurrency was built with this goal of severing, the connection of global finance and federal governments, what are the implications of governments asking crypto exchanges to exclude certain individuals and groups of people?
Justin said something earlier, which in this context I found very interesting, because I didn't hear of that. If I understood you correctly, Justin, you said that the CIA or something, an intelligence service in the US, is not very concerned with Russia using blockchains in order to circumvent the sanctions.
Yeah, and I can't. I'd have to do a little bit more research to dig into where those. It's not. It could be the reality that one person speculated and then every journal took it and ran without actually verifying the facts. So I don't want to say it's absolutely true, but it's not uncommon for me to see that in papers that I respect, like the Wall Street Journal and these kind of things, to see that claim that the U.S. hasn't actually said that they're concerned about that. So I haven't particularly done a lot of research into it, and also it just probably wouldn't be a great way to do it anyways. It just seems like there'd be way more easier ways for Russia to evade sanctions than to use crypto. It seems really difficult.
I think.
Sorry, I'll just add that Oh, sorry, Sam. Go ahead. I was just essentially repeat myself.
Finish your point, please.
I was just going to summarize and say it all goes back to, unless you have from the beginning built an anonymous profile that you really methodically put a lot of time into to mask your identity, it's really hard to move these monies. It might be easy for Russia to receive it and not know it's Russia, but it would be very hard for people in the United States or or Europe or many countries to send that money and one day, be able to say, oh no, that wasn't me. It's tied back to too many accounts that do have your verification. It doesn't matter if you have it in a third-party wallet. If they can tie that back to your Coinbase account, that's a really easy tie together. And the risk of trying to evade a sanction to send Russia, unless you're a billionaire, you can't send them enough money anyways to avoid, to bring that, to change any sort of substantial situation. So you're now putting a big risk on yourself to evade a sanction. And if you're that smart, you probably know there's a way to tie it back to you. So I just think it's really difficult right now. It doesn't mean it'll stay difficult in 5 years. I am a little worried about some of the ZK snark technology and what that could enable. But today, that's not an easy process to do.
Yeah, thank you, Justin. I will agree 100% on this one, because I think if you're like a Russian oligarch and you have billions on your account, you should have been into crypto years ago and have set up this anonymous wallet where your money is, or where you can deposit money without everybody noticing. But if you are in this position and you are a big player in the market, then you can find easier ways to get your money somewhere else, as in crypto. And also, we just need to realize, if I have money in crypto and I want to buy something, the government will know this after I purchase certain things. Like, for example, I live in Moscow, I go to London, I buy a car, which is very expensive, and somebody like an exclusive car dealership accepts crypto, then they will see me with this car. And it needs to be like licensed on somebody, there need to be documents on the name of somebody. And if I do this effort to give it to the name of a friend or somebody else, so they cannot get the car from me or take my car away, then it's easier, like Justin said, to do it in other ways than crypto. So I think that's not a big problem. And like you said, Nicholas, the good side in all of this is way, way bigger than the bad side. Like the donations, the help, the community standing together, supporting Ukraine in the war, the money which is donated, all the people getting together. That's what Justin and I mentioned about the crypto community and how they are helping immediately in just seconds or minutes. Things will start. And I think we should more focus on the positive part than on the little negative part, because I think it's a small percentage of what is going around.
I mean, logically, what we know is that if the Bitcoin would be considered, which is the biggest cryptocurrency, market capitalization around $700 billion US, is that right? More or less, I think something around that. Russia basically has as a balance of roughly 700 billions of US dollars at the moment, right? And the problem is that this money is currently frozen in the Federal Reserve System because they cannot have access, because they don't have access to the SWIFT system, and the Russian central bank doesn't have, is basically sanctioned by the other banks. If you now would imagine that all of that money is basically converted into Bitcoins, so this money is as much as the total market capitalization is. In other words, if Russia would go into Bitcoins, and even to a larger extent, what I'm now arguing would hold for other smaller cryptocurrencies, that would put an immense volatility into the market. And the same would happen if they would go out again. I doubt, frankly, that this is manageable and controllable in the end. Right? I mean, if you buy 1/7 of the entire $100 billion, 1/7 of the entire balance of Bitcoins which exist in the world, I would expect that this is going to be a market catastrophe if you go in and out. So therefore, I don't think it's feasible.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think that might just be a good thing to note for just general trading, whether it's stocks or crypto, is that if you're a big player, you have a custodian that will help you move mass amounts of money. I mean, you might see these crazy figures of like Bill Gates has 75 billion in assets. Bill Gates can't just go to a bank and cash that in. There's a lengthy process to move that amount of assets without crashing your own stock price, without finding a buyer. I mean, you might have $75 billion in assets, but someone needs to want 75 billion in that if you're going to do one sale, and that's hard. So the moving vast amounts of money is not easy. It's not a click. Even in crypto, the same rules apply. You need a buyer if you want to sell.
Yeah.
Well, this is definitely a hard and interesting topic. It's and we'll see how it plays out. To change the topic just slightly before we close, which we're about 3 minutes away from 8:30 Central European time. If I could get you guys to answer Space Code's question, if you could just go round robin, we do one thing. If he wanted to invest into development of Web3, what should he focus on? And I'll start with you, Professor Rudolph.
I really think that this is a question for the younger colleagues here in this round. So maybe I can pass this question on.
Please pass it on to whoever you like.
Yeah.
I can take it just to open up with some key points. First of all, do your own research. If you want to invest into the development of Web3, look who is developing Web3. There are some cryptocurrency projects or some projects working on it where you can just buy the cryptos, and by buying the crypto, you directly invest into the project. There are some NFTs where you can invest in. So I think that's not a question you could answer and say, yeah, just buy the cryptocurrencies and everything's good. Just do your own research and check out what do you like and what project do you believe in, and don't risk everything in one project, because crypto is still very young and very risky. And me personally, I would recommend some cryptocurrencies which are working on Web3 development. But maybe Justin has some more information on this one.
I always get so nervous about saying anything regarding investment advice, so I won't give that. I will give some investment tips that I've learned the hard way. I echo everything Sam said. Put it in the projects you want. The other thing is, I like platforms. You know, I might like a certain product on Ethereum, but ultimately, if that product's successful in some way, Ethereum's going to benefit from that. So I like putting my money into platforms, and I've learned this so many times that if I would have just stayed patient, I would have earned way more money than if I was always trying to chase the next big thing. So if you are in it for money, you just have to stay patient, make a few bets that you particularly like, and stay patient. But ultimately, yeah, you have to do a ton of your own diligence, and it depends on your own financial situation. So yeah, but platforms are my favorite, whether we're talking about cryptocurrency or we're talking about traditional computers. It's way more. Yeah, it's way more interesting to bet on a platform that enables others to build, as opposed to just a product that has, you know, one purpose or something like that.
I'll try to answer from the developer standpoint and what we are missing in the space right now. If you're for the financial upside, if you want to be in the Web3 space, you've heard some probably great advice now. But regarding what we're missing in the Web3 space, a lot of tooling, a lot of onboarding tools. Even for technical people, it's super hard to get into, like buying NFTs and setting up your wallets, and especially if like you're using some other marketplaces other than the common kind of usual suspects. So companies that are building different tools around the ecosystem that are helping people kind of get faster into Web3, you know, just like making it easy for people to build stuff. So I would suggest looking into that and researching what are the players and new upcoming players, because there's a lot every day.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. And Professor Rudolph, I'll leave you with one question that's directed towards you from the comments, from Frank. Unrelated, does WHU still have a disco in the basement?
Well, we have the vaulted cellar. This is probably what you mean. And I'm happy that I can announce here that we have been able to open it again for the use of students due to the more relaxed COVID-19 regulations of the state. So the answer is yes, we have that wonderful vaulted cellar there. And yes, it's still used for parties, and hopefully more often than in the last 2 years.
Wonderful. Well, guys, thank you so much, all of you, our participants, Professor Dr. Rudolph. I would like to just extend an extra thank you to the WHU video and marketing departments, to Carmen Fernandez Aruna, to Garrett McGowan, Matej Iandolo, Pablo Betzelt, Jan Trau, and the rest of the WHU Inside Business team. Please, guest speakers, stick around for a bit. We have a little outro here. And to our audience across the globe, thank you for tuning in. We appreciate all of your support, your questions, and we hope to see you next time in episode 4 of Perspectives. Thank you.